Hello, ladies and gentlemen. In this episode of our app development series, the concept we're going to focus on is source control. Source control is a good idea because it allows you to take snapshots of your code. And if you ever make some sort of catastrophic error in your code, you can easily go back to a previous state. I recommend using Github for your source control because it's free and easy to use and very convenient. And as an added bonus, GitHub provides you a way to automatically back up your code in a separate location just in case something happens to your hard drive. And if you choose to make your code repository public, you're also helping other programmers like yourself to learn by allowing them to read through your code. So I'm going to scroll over to my personal GitHub page, and I'm on my repositories tab, and I'll click new to create a new repository. And I'm going to name this one MLB app because we're currently working on an MLB app. And for the description, I'll write React Native MLB app. I'm going to make mine public. If you have a paid account, you can choose to make it private, but I recommend going public if possible. And I will initialize the repository with the README and click Create Repository. Now the repository is created, and what I need to do is get my code into the repository. I have actually already started coding the app, so I've got some existing code, but you may choose to create your repository before you even start any coding, and then you can just add to it immediately. So now I'm going to click the clone or download button, which will give me a URL to the repository, and if I click this button, it will copy it to the clipboard. And then I'll scroll back over to my desktop, and I'm going to create a new folder for my repository, and I'll type it as MLB app, and then I'll right click and choose to create a new terminal at the folder. Now to create a clone of the repository, I'll type git clone and then paste the URL. And what that's going to do is create a new folder in here, and it'll have a complete copy of the repository, which currently only contains the README file. It also has this invisible folder called .git, which has some information about the repository itself. The next thing I want to do is create the .gitignore file, which is a file that tells Git which files and folders to ignore when adding to the repository. And some of the folders that we'd want to ignore are the node modules folder. And the main reason is because this is just a huge folder, takes up a lot of space, and it doesn't really have any of your actual code in it. It's something you can easily get back by just calling npm install. And another thing that you may want to ignore are any API keys that you're storing in your app. I currently don't have any API keys, but I do have a node modules folder, so I'm going to ignore that. So in the console, I will clear this, and I want to cd into the repository folder, which is right here. And the easiest way I've found to create a new file is to type touch and .gitignore, and now I have my gitignore file. And this is just a plain text file, so you can open it up in any text editor. I'll open it up in Sublime Text. And since I want to ignore the node modules folder, I'll just type node modules and save it. Okay, now I'm ready to add my code to the repository. So I'm going to come over to the folder that I had been working with, which is right here. This is where all of my code is stored. And this folder on the right is the repository. And I'm just going to copy and paste the code into the repository, but I'm going to skip these files because I get an error anytime I try to copy those, and they aren't really that important anyway. Now that all the code is copied into my repository folder, I'm going to close my original folder, and I'll collapse my code screen to make this a little bit cleaner. And I'm going to come back to the terminal, and there are 3 commands I need to run in order to send the code to the repository. The first one is git add star, and what that does is it adds any files that aren't already added to the repository. And I'm getting a message that's telling me the following paths are ignored by my gitignore file, the node modules folder, which is exactly what we want. The next command I run is git commit -m, and then a comment in quotes, and this is a comment that will appear in GitHub next to this particular commit. So I'm just going to say initial commit. Normally you want this message to be related to whatever kind of code you're committing. So if you added a new feature, you'll say what feature you've added. Click enter, and I get a message telling me about all of the things it's done. And the final command to run is git push origin master, and this actually sends the commit to the repository. And I'll need to type in my password. Okay, so all the code should have been added now. If I can scroll over to my GitHub page and I'll refresh the repository. And as we can see, all of my code is now available in GitHub. And you can also notice that the node modules folder is not there. Now in the future, if I lose my code or if I go to another computer and I need to access the code, all I need to do is call the git clone command and supply this URL, and I'll have my current state of code. I highly recommend using source code for any major project that you're working on. And like I said, GitHub is free and easy to use, so I would recommend using GitHub. Thanks for watching the video.